to join me up here. I think we're ready for that. I have no preferences. Great. And there's the other mic. Perfect.
Is that okay?
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Fingers together. Okay, great. This mic will stay in my hands, and this mic will float across yours. All right? So just to orient all of us for how this event is going to go, I'm going to give you a few of the guidelines for the forum. This is particularly important for all of you to listen to and for all of you to understand so you know the flow of how things are going to go. First of all, this is a community forum and not a debate. So our purpose is to allow you all as candidates to share your views and perspectives with the attendees and the people who might be watching online. Candidates are not to directly address each other at any point during the forum, so this won't be a back and forth dialogue amongst you two. The second point is that in order to ensure equal time for the candidates, there's going to be a strictly enforced 2-minute time limit on each question, unless I specify otherwise, and I don't know why I would do that. That makes it very complicated for me. So instead, you'll be given a 15-second warning when your time is up. Ash in front is going to give you that, and then when you need to stop, there will be a lovely bright red stop sign. Feel free to stop mid-sentence. Otherwise, I will stop you mid-sentence. No, I will politely interrupt you. And then the third point for the event is that candidates will be given the opportunity to state your name, pronouns, and the district you are running to represent before we begin. That'll be the next step. And then after all of that, candidates will be given 2 minutes to offer any closing statements. Great? Okay, wonderful. So with that said, we are all oriented to how this is going to go. Let's begin with our introductions, again with your name, your pronouns, and the district you are running to represent.
Hey everyone, first off I want to thank Boulder, the BIPOC Alliance and CEC for hosting this event, and also for the church as well. Thank you so much. I'm Scott Schoenbauer. I'm running for District A in here in Fort Collins for the Poudre School Board. Do we want to say why we're running, or?
No, we will wait till you answer the questions.
Okay. Well, I'll hand it off.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Havelda. I use he, him pronouns. I'm running for District B. Also, just want to thank our hosts. This is not our 2-minute opening. This is just introductions.
This is your name, pronouns, where you want to represent, and I guess some gratitude, sure.
Nice.
Thank you to our hosts, but especially thank you all for being here and showing up. I really appreciate it.
Lovely, well done.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. Kurt Castine, I am running in District B, and I also thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Out Boulder County, thanks for inviting us. It's important to dialogue. It's not so much a dialogue as a forum, one-sided, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk, so thanks.
I'm Jessica Zamora. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm running in District G, and thank you also for letting us be here.
Good evening, I'm Connor Duffy. Thanks for hosting this evening. I use he, him pronouns, and I am running for District F. And for those of you who don't know, that's kind of South Fort Collins, Windsor, and the Timnath area.
Great, thank you. Why don't you just hold on to the microphone? Okay. We'll just get started with you. Okay. Lucky draw.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll begin with our first question. Again, everybody will be able to answer the question. You'll have 2 minutes. So listen carefully. These are complex, compound questions. I'll do my best. So the first topic is school climate. Our public schools and all education settings must become spaces where BIPOC, LGBTQ, and all students are safe from societal violence, like discrimination, and institutional harm, such as erasure and bias. What will you do as a school board
Those things are very important for every student in the building. So those are the loopholes that we've got to get done really quick and tactical. As far as creating a safe space for everyone, I think that hands down, as a candidate and with kids in the district, I feel that everyone is welcome in the public school system, regardless of gender, race, identity, anything. School is a place where you should be able to come in, be welcoming, warm, so that you can learn. How do we do that tactically? Well, I think one of the things that we can do is definitely by empowering our administration to make local decisions. All right? The district will set the strategic policies, but the policy implementation is at the administrative level. I trust our school administrators, our principals, our RSOs, our paraprofessionals to do that work. I think they're doing a very good job. There are some areas where we can improve, but I think that if we let them manage the schools, they do a really fine job in doing that.
Thank you. Okay, how about we pass the mic to the right? And actually, you know what, I'm gonna ask this question. I don't know how about everybody else in the room, but since we are trying to get to know our candidates, I will ask that you also state your name again before you answer the question. And we're gonna be very redundant and keep doing that all night long, okay?
Do you want me to do it?
So yeah, would you like to, again, restate your name even though you just introduced yourself?
Connor Duffy, running for District F.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, just didn't know if you had anything else.
No?
All right, I am Jessica Zamora. We'll start there. There's a lot of things that we've already started working on. So, for example, you know, our SROs, we still have them in our buildings, but we've done a lot of work to ensure that they are performing in the best interest of our students, and we are leaving behavioral challenges to our actual administrators and the school staff, so we're not actually causing more harm than just causing more harm. Let's leave it at that. We've already started doing some gender-affirming policies where students, you know, have a right to be able to tell teachers what the pronouns are that they prefer to use, what the name is, how they prefer to be addressed. I think every time we have new construction, we've now implemented gender-neutral bathrooms, which are very important, and create at least some safety, right? We don't have all the solutions, and we don't have all the money to do all the solutions for, like, right this second, but as we do things, we can always improve. I think as far as students of color and our cultural acceptance, and that doesn't just include, obviously, race, but also our gender identities, our cultures from around the world, our language usage. We have a group in the district, is our equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think their order of letters is a little different than some other institutions. And they do a lot of work ensuring that our curriculum is as culturally responsive as possible. It's obviously not perfect. There's obviously a lot of work that needs to be done, but they are constantly being utilized as a resource, and they're experts at doing it. We currently have a new literacy curriculum, and I've already talked to some teachers, and they're like, hey, we found some things that weren't great, and they talked to that department, and it's being revised, and we're finding new resources to support that work. All right, I will wrap up. Thank you.
My name's Kurt Castine, and I want to talk about the question of differences in the community within PSD and how do we apply safety more or less to
Yes, how
all minorities.
can all students, particularly BIPOC and LGBTQ plus students, be safe from societal violence like discrimination and institutional harm like erasure and bias?
Yeah. So I think I just want to start by saying we are in a public school, and it's very important, it's critical for us to recognize that we have differences, and we need to respect those differences. So my goal is to really build community within PSD, to work with teachers and staff and administrators and students to understand that we have differences, and it's okay to have differences. We're not all going to be alike. To respect the differences we have and not to require that our beliefs are the same. So I wanted to start there, and with that understanding, and it comes from the top down. So it's important for the school board to make that statement and to live like that. One aspect I would just say about safety, you know, I have heard a lot from teachers about discipline and how difficult it really is in the classroom. I sympathize with them. I can only imagine an unruly classroom and how hard it is to deal with students that are not behaving. So in my view, that comes down to really trusting our teachers to understand the needs of each kid individually, to apply discipline appropriately, to use punitive measures, to use restorative justice measures, whatever happens to work for the individual situation, to maintain a culture of learning in the classroom. And that in itself brings safety. It brings a feeling of, okay, this teacher's got it figured out. And then to be backed up by the administrator when teachers make decisions. So again, I really believe in empowering the people that are in the room to do the work. And I think that helps with the culture of safety within the school.
Thank you.
Again, my name's Kevin Havelda, running for District B. My view of this is informed from my own time in the classroom. I believe in my core that an excellent education is the birthright of every single American kid. So too in PSD, wherever it is in the country. I also believe, having spent time in classrooms, that our classrooms are both incubators and mirrors of how we are as a democracy. And let me explain. How we treat our kids and how they treat one another is a direct reflection of the values that we are putting into our schools from the top down. And so what would I do? I would continue the important work of highlighting mental health and belonging in our communities, because before kids can learn, they have to feel safe. That is a fundamental need, and we have to meet every kid where they are. On a granular level, what are some things that we could be doing? There's two things that I could do as a board director, since that was the question. One is to highlight and amplify some of the curricula that's already been selected with anti-bullying measures. Kids need to know what bullying looks like from a young age. They need to be able to name it, to own it, and to support their peers that are trying to do something about it. Teachers need to be ever prevalent in the classrooms in these discussions as well, and help facilitate growth and learning with kids at an early age. That's what we did. And the second thing I think I would do is, again, if you've been to the board meetings, this is one of the things that I love the most, is that it brings community together. And it highlights and shows and it recognizes some of the incredible work that people in our community are doing. I would use those opportunities to highlight schools, teachers, students who are demonstrating inclusivity in our schools, because I think they are the best representatives of what our values are, and so we can reflect that to the community and praise them in a very public forum.
I'm Scott Schoenbauer, District A. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said here. I think the best part about PSD and what I've learned a lot over the last 4 years being involved in different volunteer committees and things like that is the people, the teachers, the administrators, really, and the students, of course. I really think we need to trust those individual schools to, be in charge of not only training their staff, but also really having bullying discussions with the kids. It starts in elementary school with the counselors talking to the little kids. The littles really can learn right from the beginning, what bullying looks like and what to, kind of the pitfalls of different things. One big area for me, and you guys are probably sick of me talking about this, cell phones in schools, I think are a huge problem. It seems like a simplistic thing, but if we can get cell phones out of sight and out of mind, we eliminate a lot of troubling things. There are multiple studies in multiple countries that are outlawing cell phones in schools because of the damage social media is doing to kids. There's social media addiction, there's distracted learning, of course, and there's a lot of bullying that happens through social media and texting, talking behind each other's back in those classrooms through cell phones and things like that. I think we need to give the kids a break from those, have those put away for the school day, and I think we'll see a world of difference with mental health and academics, frankly.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm realizing you just answered that question, so you might be a little exhausted to start with the next one. So how about we pass it to the middle, and we're just gonna see if we can make this work as a weird pattern. Okay, this second question is about school resource officers, SROs. It's a complex question, so let me start with a little bit of context. In 2020, the Poudre School Board created a community advisory council to evaluate and provide recommendations for the use of SROs. A substantial investment was made to curate the council, which included dozens of community members and PSD staff. The council reviewed PSD data, incident reports, and responses from student surveys to develop recommendations for the district. But to date, we know there has been no plan to implement these changes. So how would you implement those changes and remain accountable to your community? What recommendations can you accomplish in your term? And please acknowledge the timeline and how the community will remain informed throughout the process, again, of responding to all the work on SRO recommendations.
Glad I'm going first. My name is Kevin Avelda. I would object to the compound nature of that question if we were in a deposition setting. Since we're not, I'll do my best.
I didn't write it. It wasn't me. I didn't write it. I'm just reading it.
No, it's an excellent question, and I wish I had more than 2 minutes. I think we deserve an entire series of community engagements. I'll start with a recent anecdote. When I went to a board meeting recently, they provided data between incident reports from last calendar year and this calendar year, and they were highlighting and praising the fact that the number of instances and different sort of data points were down this year. And I could see the SROs and the staff, they were really excited by that. I taught in an alternative school. I taught some of the hardest kids that there possibly were. And I know for a fact, in my own experience, that hard policies or hardening schools doesn't help. It doesn't meet kids where they are. And I use this adage a lot, but fairness is not giving everyone the same thing. It's giving them what they need. Certain kids need more resources. They need more interaction with staff. They need more teachers in their lives, which will obviate the need to have SROs as a part of their daily contact. That said, I am a parent of a PSD kid who's a 5th grader, and I have a nightmare that every day I'm going to send my kid to school and it'll be the last time that I see them, because that's the world that we live in now. So I do think there is a place in our society and our schools for SROs. As far as timeline, I think we have to I'm wearing my Google socks, and my wife made fun of me, but I'm a data guy, and I think the data has to inform policy and inform decisions. And right now we're seeing a downward trajectory of some of these contacts. But more importantly, the contacts that they're having are very positive. We're seeing that they're not being reported, they're not escalating up to get them into sort of the prison pipeline. What we're seeing is, for lack of a better word, it's sort of a catch and release, and then more of a remediation with kids that are having these instances. So I don't have a silver bullet. I don't know where maybe I hit the second or third part of that question, but I'm at 15 seconds. So I'm going to pass the mic and say it's an important subject, an important conversation. I trust our schools, and again, we need to keep padding mental health and belonging.
Yeah, Kurt Castine again. So SROs are important in Poudre School District, and I think gotten a little bit of a bad vibe sometimes around SROs that, of course, there are kids that feel intimidated. That's true. At the same time, it's such an important thing to respect law enforcement in general and how SROs represent that in schools. We want to have a very positive image of SROs. We want kids to understand that that SROs are there to support them, that are there to protect them, that they can have relationships, and they do. And I've read the report that Kevin talked about as well. There have been some real positive interactions with SROs and kids. The report is pretty lengthy. It talks about a number of things that might be implemented. It's good timing with a new board to talk about the deployment of SROs in the coming years. As you know, there are real financial difficulties within Poudre School District. How to have as many SROs as we want, deployed at the right times, in the right number, is an important conversation. I don't have the final answer on that. I know we have a lot of data to look at. I know we will engage the community with it. And in the end, we are going to have SROs in our schools. We need to find exactly the role that they fit with the money that we have to support them. And again, creating a culture where kids really trust those folks that are there to protect them.
Great. Do you need any highlights of the question again, or are you good?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
We'll see. So Jessica Zamora, and so I was actually at the meeting. I wasn't on the board yet, but I was there as the district advisory board chair that year when the decisions were made. And from what I recall, there was a fair amount of appreciation for a lot of the ideas in there, but ultimately the suggestion was that SROs should be removed, and that was the key part that wasn't followed through with. But I do think there's a lot that we've done to improve that relationship. Now, it's not perfect. I know that there are many students for whom SROs will never be a safe person for them. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get all my pieces. So something that has happened in the last couple of years is our standard operating procedures have shifted dramatically so that schools are using their resources or using the, the school resource officers wisely, right? So they're only being used as necessary. There's also been a big push to make them educators in the building so that they are more friendly or approachable. It's still not a perfect solution. Now, I've heard in other forums some folks talk about wanting to put SROs in every school, elementary school, every middle school, every high school, all day, every day. And I think that goes too far. I think we're about at our limit right now as far as what is realistic and appropriate. Our bigger schools obviously have many students, and requiring an SRO there is very different than requiring one at an elementary school. The other thing I would like to just say is that, you know, our data has improved substantially. Now, has it improved solely because our standard operating procedures have shifted, or has it shifted because, you know, we're actually behaving better? So I would almost like the council to come back and review our data again to see, hey, what have we improved on? What are we doing better? And what work still needs to be done?
Thank you. Connor Duffy again. I'm running for District F. I support SROs in the buildings. We do need to improve the process drastically. I think one of those tactical decisions that the board can make is make sure that our SROs are dressed appropriately. When I was growing up, we had SROs. None of them were in full uniform. They were in plain clothes, suit and tie. They were armed, and all the kids knew that. But I think that that's one of the things that reduces that intimidation factor. On the intimidation factor, there is a subset of students that continue and will never not be intimidated by them. We've got to work our hardest to implement policies such as putting the SROs into the classroom and teaching classes that soften their overall presence in the schools. Another thing I want to talk about as far as SROs is the disciplinary actions that they have taken in the past actually needs to be delegated down to not the SRO levels, but to our paraprofessionals. A lot of those discipline things can be handled within the school, and we don't need to have the SROs involved. Last but not least is budget. It is a big ticket item to have SROs in the schools. We are not going to be able to afford to have them in every school. In the elementary schools where people talk about that, it is just not financially feasible. What the board can do is work with the municipalities that our schools are in, Wellington, Timnath, Windsor, Fort Collins, to rely on their police departments, not in the schools, but in the parking lots. Timnath does this very well. Windsor does this very well, even at the elementary school levels. I think that's something that can be implemented district-wide and will make all of our students safer. Thank you.
I don't know how we ended up with you being last again. It didn't work that way in my brain initially.
Ready for the next question? Oh, this one. Well, I'm the guy that said SRO should be in every school, and here's why. I don't think, we all, like Kevin was saying, we all worry about our kids when they go off to school, given the current environment. And I think it would just be unbelievably hollow if we said, oh, we didn't do everything we could to keep everybody safe if a Uvalde were to, God forbid, happen here in Fort Collins. So I think the city will be willing, if we need to do even, we can redistribute the budget, but if we need to actually ask for higher taxes to make sure there's an SRO in every school, absolutely they would do it. Right now, we rotate SROs between about 3 to 5 elementary schools. So there are 4 days of the week that a lot of schools have no protection, no deterrent. So if you're looking to attack a school, you just pay attention to that schedule and you can do it. And the most vulnerable. And I know that's not a popular thing to say, but I think, Connor even said they can be outside. That's a deterrent. That's a hardening of the target. They don't have to be inside. But here's what's good about when they are inside, especially in elementary schools. You can establish a positive relationship if you have the properly trained SRO. Percent said that SROs were important or critical. 86% of BIPOC said that same thing,
Okay.
BIPOC parents.
Before you go on, yeah.
Take a look at it. The survey is published, so we need to read what our community's saying. Sorry.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, let's pass it all the way to the middle. That way you won't be the end again.
All the way to the middle.
I like this.
That's you.
I guess
That's you. All right, this topic is parental involvement. Here's the question. The concept of parental rights is a political hot button issue in national and local conversations about our schools. Do you believe students should be able to choose a name and pronouns to go by in school without their parents being notified? What information should be given to parents about their students? And how do you balance parental rights with student safety?
Kurt Castine, District B. Yeah, parental rights is important. I talk about parent partnerships a little bit more, where parents and teachers are partnering together for the benefit of their kids. Ultimately, though, parents have the responsibility for their child, for their physical health, for their mental health, their emotional health, everything having to do with their child. The parents are in charge. And something as important as deciding your name and what your gender might be, it's critical that the parent is up front for that decision. I would support a way for parents to be in the loop and for them to understand that the child wants to change their name and to go through a simple process to make that the case. I would not want parents to be surprised after the fact to learn down the road at some point that it had been hidden from them, that they did not understand that somehow the child had started a process to really change, fundamentally change, without informing the parent. I think that that's wrong. And we don't want to put teachers in a predicament where they are somehow creating more acrimony at home than they would if they just required that the parent be the one in charge, which is their role. That is the role of the parent. We don't want the teachers to have to step into the role of the parent.
Thank you.
Jessica Zamora, District G. So students should get to decide their name and their pronouns. Our district policy states that. I agree with our district policy. I support our district policy. And it still follows the law. If parents want to know, they have the right to ask. We are required to tell them. That is legally required. But a student also has to have some autonomy and rights in there too. And if a student doesn't feel that their parents are ready for that information, they have a right to have an opportunity to develop a plan on how they're going to tell their parents or who can help them with that process. It's not teachers who are the ones who typically are the first person that's helping. It's their counselor. It's somebody who has the knowledge and the know-how to navigate these difficult conversations. But a child needs to be at the center of that, and we can't negate a child's rights for the sake of a parent's rights.
Well, I don't think I can say that much better. I think I agree with Jessica. I think that every child, that's their decision. And they're going to school to learn and not to have to deal with everything else. Like we were saying in the beginning, it needs to be a safe place for a learning environment. When a child feels safe and comfortable and fits in and feels part of the community and accepted for who they are, they learn better. And that's the point of the district, right? That's the point of going to school, is for education. I agree, parents, may be upset by this, but at the end of the day, if a parent's right is upsetting that safe spot for that student to be able to learn the very best that they can, then the child is first. There is a full process for parents to be involved and to find out that information from the school district, as is right now. They can do that already. It's not some big drastic change that we don't have or something is hidden. Right? And last but not least, I always think about this is, you know, if your student, if your child is thriving and doing great because of who they are in the school, isn't that what matters to you as a parent? I've got 3 kids. That's what matters to me when they go to school. And that's really, really important, that they're accepted for who they are and they can do better that way. That's where I come down on that issue. I don't think we need any drastic changes with the policy.
Kevin Novelda for District B.
Oh, you want to jump on this? Let's keep our proper
No,
order.
it's fine.
Let's do
I
the
didn't
order.
know the order.
He's been last every time.
Oh, we were doing like a.
It's all good.
No, I'm going to be adamant about this. You cannot go last
Classroom
again.
management's important.
Throws the whole thing
Well
off.
done. Well done. Thanks. For
Chop it at the bit.
Yeah, exactly. This guy, I know, right? He's got the Google socks. I'm loving it. It's fantastic. I think this is a really, you know, obviously a hot button issue. I'm also about parent partnerships, and I think that is parents' rights is a hot button issue, and it's a scare tactic, honestly. Nobody loves their kids more than their parents. I have 3 kids, and I absolutely adore them. And I think there is an assumption, and it's probably there are anecdotal pieces of evidence that there are unsupportive parents out there. But I would say 99.9% of parents absolutely love their kids and will support them no matter where they are headed in terms of their identity and that type of thing. They want to be there. Just think about your own kids, people who have kids here. Just think about that. If you didn't know different things about your kids, but somebody else in a position of trust does, that's some dangerous territory. And I think it's really important that we find a way for parents to be involved, especially the younger kids. I see both sides of this. I have family members who are in the LGBTQ community, and it has been in the past especially difficult. It's a more accepted thing these days, but you know, my family members had no problem talking to us because we are a loving family, and most families are. And so I think it's really important to change the dynamic or change the paradigm in our heads that the parents are not going to be supportive of this. And think about the role of a school. The role of a school is to educate every kid every day. It's about academics. We don't need to get into all these other societal issues. We're not teaching kids what religion to be in and that type of thing. So we don't need to jump into every new trendy topic. And honestly, sometimes it can be like this. This is an important topic, but it is the talk right now.
All right, Kevin, you're up.
You can sum it up.
Okay. Let's make it. I appreciate your classroom management. I was a stickler too. Kevin Novelda, running for District B. I think I'll state first that I respectfully reject the premise of the question. And hear me out. I've been thinking a lot about parental rights and hearing that a lot in national conversations and local conversations. To me, it presupposes that parents don't have rights right now. I disagree with that. There are no embossed invitations in your kid's education. You either show up or you don't. You need to get involved or you don't. And so that's the first thing that I'd say. You have a vested interest in knowing what your kid is learning, what they're being taught every single day by talking to your student, by talking to your teachers, by talking to your principals. I know, my wife and I both have jobs. It's hard to keep up with the emails. It's hard to keep up with the readers. But these are our most prized possessions, and so I am invested in what my kids are learning every single day. The second thing is, yes, I agree with Jess and Connor on this issue. Kids get to make that choice. And here's why I believe that in my core. Talking about data, there's a study that really caught my mind from Ms. Draper, thank you for passing this along to my attention, that youth that are transitioning in the LGBTQ community have reported that if they have a trusted advisor and mentor in a school building, they are 40% less likely to have suicidal ideation. I'm going to let that stop for a moment. So when we're talking about importance of parental rights versus kids, I'm going to side with kids' right to live and kids' right to be who they are every single day of the week. And if you have a problem with that, you need to get involved. You need to get involved in your kids' education. You need to talk to your parents. Well, I used to call what's the triumvirate relationship between the student, the teacher, and the parent. And they are co-equal in a lot of ways, and they're only strong if they work together. So I reject respectfully the premise of the question, and that's what I believe.
Great, thank you. You were so excited to answer that question that I feel like maybe everybody is feeling a little amped up right now. So I'm going to invite us all to take a breath. Whew. We're not even halfway done yet. So if you need to get up or stand up or something, by all means, take care of yourselves. Let's pass it over to Jessica, and we will go to the fifth question. This is actually, nope, sorry. We're on the fourth question.
All right.
All right, this one is on bullying and discrimination. The question is that schools have always been a site of bullying and discrimination for students who are not white, heterosexual, cisgender, and able-bodied. How will you address the bullying and discrimination that BIPOC and LGBTQ+ students face? And how will you ensure that faculty and staff are equipped to respond to this bullying and discrimination? How will you balance more punitive measures with restorative justice practices? Three-part question, no big deal.
I just want to make sure I get it. All right, so for starters, as a school board, we set policy. So one of the policies that we read at our last board meeting was actually our bullying prevention policy. And in there, we've changed some of the language to include some subset of the power dynamic as part of bullying. So when one student has more power or more perceived or actual power than the other student, that is a huge indicator of how bullying started. So that's one piece of it, is just that policy. And I would invite you to read that policy, give feedback on that policy. We had a first read. We could use all the feedback we can get, because if you haven't seen the board recently, it's full of white people who are generally privileged. So our lens is not as wide as it should be or could be. Specific to our BIPOC and LGBTQIA, right? At the board, we don't do this work. We're not in the classroom with students each and every day. We visit, we hang out, we may read some books, but we're not the primary trusted adults. And so we need students, trusted adults, to have all the education they can, all of the tools they can to support students, to be able to address challenges. Have counselors in every school building that is specifically trained in how to deal with students' misconceptions of each other, students mistreating of each other. I mean, I have 2 young kids. They get in trouble. They have to work through those conversations. Luckily, we haven't entered into that world, but specific to the BIPOC and LGBTQI+. But also, one of them's in middle school, and I know it's coming. Right? We can't prevent everything, but we can definitely help them develop healthy skills to be able to accommodate that. Oh, restorative justice. I got 15 seconds. We need to expand that. We also need to change some of our policies so that we can incorporate more restorative justice. We've been a zero tolerance policy, not just here, across the country for a really long time, and we need to work our way away from that.
Okay, thank you.
You want to read a little bit of the question?
Yeah,
again?
sure. So the three-part questions are: how will you ensure that faculty and staff are equipped to respond to bullying and discrimination for BIPOC and LGBTQ+ students? How will you balance more punitive measures with restorative justice practices? And generally, how will you address the bullying?
Okay, so Connor Duffy. At the very fundamental level, it is, for me, on bullying, is prevention, prevention, prevention. And it starts at the kindergarten age, even younger than that. And the reason why I say that is because it starts early. And it continues on and continues on. One of the areas of prevention that we have to do a lot more work in is making sure that our administrators, our paraprofessionals, our bus drivers, our teachers are trained well in identifying the root cause of some of these bullying incidences for all communities. That takes some time. It takes a different mindset amongst teachers, and it gives them one other thing that they still have to do. I think the paraprofessionals within our school are in an advantageous position to see this amongst all communities in there, but especially communities that are historically, for lack of a better term, picked on within our schools. As far as the discipline that comes out of this, and what is equitable or punishable, we've got to make sure that once we have the policies in place that are coming down and that we have our teachers trained, that we say to our kids, like, you're either going to do this or you're not, because it's really, really detrimental to a lot of people in the school. Last but not least, I think for the overall in general thing, again, is parents, right? Parents need to be involved in this. A lot of times parents don't understand what's going on, whether your kid is doing this to somebody else, whether they think it's joking or not. But if we engage the parents, that's one of the ways that this gets nipped in the bud really, really quick.
All right. You have an understanding. Yeah, this is a tough subject for sure, but I think it's important to remember a lot of vulnerable communities. Obviously, LGBTQ and the BIPOC community, but I think PSD, and we've seen this in recent news, has a big problem with the special needs community as well. There are a lot of parents that do not feel heard. You see it at every school board meeting with a lot of the problems going on. Google Tyler Zanella in the Coloradoan. That is the parapro that was abusing autistic kids, nonverbal autistic kids, on the bus for months, possibly the full school year. And it's just absolutely abhorrent that this was allowed. Talk about training. How about hiring practices? We need to make sure we're hiring staff that are properly equipped to do the job and not have a negative impact. There are a lot of kids that were on those buses that aren't ever going to be the same because of that. And that is something, it's a real tragedy in our district that we need to own up to. In terms of restorative justice, I think there are a lot of positives to that. The one thing I worry about is if you're re-traumatizing the victim by having those meetings. It's obviously up to the victim whether they want to do that or not, but I think there's a lot of pressure to do that, and sometimes that can do more damage. So I think it's important to have consequences when the seriousness warrants it, but I also think it is good to teach kids how to handle those situations, how to handle conflict and that type of thing.
Can I bother you to reread the entire question one more time? Because it was a really good question. I want to make sure I don't leave things out,
The entire question?
if you don't mind.
Okay. Schools have always been a site of bullying and discrimination for students who are not white, heterosexual, cisgender, and able-bodied. How will you address the bullying and discrimination that BIPOC and LGBTQ plus students face? And how will you ensure that faculty and staff are equipped to respond to this bullying and discrimination? Finally, how will you balance more punitive measures with restorative justice practices?
I think I can get to most of those in 2 minutes. I'm going to talk a little fast. Thank you. Kevin Develder, running for District B. I'll start near the end as far as what we do with staff. Again, having been a teacher, I don't think the solution to every single one of our problems is to put more work on teachers and to say it's your job to fix our society, our classrooms, all of our ills. So that said, I do think we could be a lot more thoughtful with some of the professional development that we are requiring our teachers to take. And perhaps before we have a major shift in a curriculum and have a 30-year writing teacher decide that she or he has to relearn how to teach again, maybe we're a little more thoughtful about having some inclusivity training and some sensitivity training about what it means to have privilege, to own it, to see it, and to help bring people into our schools. The second thing, I'll start towards the beginning of that question, is that I don't believe that any kid is born wanting to be a bully. I don't believe that any kid is born wanting to hurt other people. That's learned, and it can be unlearned. And so one of the things that I think we need to do in our classrooms, again, and this is part of a district priority and part of a district value statement, is what are the authors that we are having our kids learn? What do they look like? What do they sound like? Who are they? if kids don't see themselves represented in the material that they are learning, they're a lot less likely to be engaged. And so I'd like to see, quite frankly, a lot less white male authors in our classrooms and a lot more BIPOC, LGBTQ authors as well, so that kids can see themselves in the material that they're learning and be a part of the community and not just a subset of it. I forgot the third part of your question. I'm so sorry.
It was what we do to address the bullying, what about faculty and staff, and then restorative justice.
Okay, so I think the second and the last go together as far as restorative justice and what we do. Again, this goes with the fact that I don't believe kids want to be bullies, that this is an expression of something they are. That said, identifying that and some of those inklings in kids early on and getting them help with a mental health professional in each school is something that I think is paramount, which is why it's a district priority. I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more, I'm sorry.
Kurt Castine, District B. Bullying is just another example of where the thing I talked about at the first question I had, where respect for differences is so different or is so important. Bullying is one of those cases where somebody decides that somebody is different and they deserve to be picked on, which is absolutely wrong. There's no one here that would support bullying being okay. There's no one in the school setting that would support it, and yet it happens today. Part of it is, again, realizing from the top down that we have to build community in our schools, that we have to talk about the fact that there are differences, and differences are okay. We have to learn to live with our differences and still have community. When bullying occurs, there are various ways to address it. We talked about restorative justice. We haven't talked about punitive measures, but that's another approach. Again, it's up to the individual case. How severe is the bullying? Is it something that a teacher simply in the classroom can pull a kid aside and say, hey, do you know what you did bullying your classmate? That was wrong. Do you understand the consequences? You hurt their feelings. It's not good. That's a microcosm of restorative justice in the classroom with the teacher and the child that had the offense. Other times the bullying is more severe. When someone who is bigger and tougher and hurts somebody seriously, either physically or emotionally, that needs to be addressed swiftly. The victim needs to be removed from the situation, or the offender needs to be removed, the victim needs to be restored. Those two need to be separated, and there may be very strong punitive measures that are required. Again, it's up to the individual case. We have to say, though, at the top, it's not going to be tolerated. We're going to talk about it. We're going to educate people about when it occurs so it can end.
Let's pass it this way, so you can go first this time. And we are leading into some of what Kevin was already bringing up. This topic is on curriculum. So some advocates and people in positions of power have attempted to remove books that represent BIPOC and LGBTQ+ people and cultures, as well as references to the histories and lived realities of those communities from our libraries and classrooms. How would you ensure that books, curriculum, and standards in PSD are fully inclusive and accurate?
Thank you. Scott Schoenbauer, I keep forgetting to say that. Yeah, I think I'm not for book banning. I don't think anybody here is for book banning. That's another hot button issue that kind of gets projected onto to local races. So I'm for really, kids need to learn how to critically think. That's one of the big things you get out of an education is how to be a critical thinker. Not what to think, but how to think. And I think that's really important. So it's good to have a variety of books. Some of the controversy is with age appropriateness. I'm in favor of age appropriate books being in the different schools. When there was a controversial book, when my kids were in elementary school or middle school, the teacher would send home a permission slip saying, hey, we've got some sensitive topics. It might be of sexual nature or it might be violence. You don't know what could trigger bad memories from an abuse victim if a student's been abused. So you want the parent to be aware of these books, sign off, yeah, it's okay for them to participate in this particular lesson, that type of thing. So we found that to be helpful when we were parents, and same thing with movies and that type of thing if they show something. And I think that still does happen at PSD, and it's because it's a good policy. So.
Do you want to go all the way around again, or Want to start there and come this way?
Sure, let's do it.
We're getting wild up here.
Thank you, Connor Duffy. I, of course, don't agree with banning books. I think that's a silly and simple idea to get somebody's own personal political agenda pushed into our schools. As far as the appropriateness of material in the district, I don't think we need any wholesale changes. We have a director of curriculum that is a paid position within the district. Parents are time and time again invited to review curriculum with them, go through the process of what is in our curriculum, what may be added, what may be excluded. It is arduous. And one of the big things is there's not much motivation from the parents. You know, people show up for 1 or 2 meetings and then that's it. But to get something into the curriculum, it takes longer. On that same note, when there has been any kind of controversy in the district over curriculum, I'm very proud that we always, and seem to in the past, have been more inclusive than exclusive. And the reason why I'm proud of the district on that is because with somebody with kids in the district, I want them to learn all viewpoints. Doesn't say that you have to agree with them, but you're going to learn about them because it's somebody's viewpoint, and their viewpoint is just as valid as the one that you hold. And I think that if we continue to do that as a district and we make our curriculum broader with more depth, then our children learn better. Right? We don't want to just have curriculum that comes from, on high. Here's the facts, regurgitate them to us. We want to be able to give our children a broad curriculum and say, what do you think about that? And when we do that, we graduate better members of the community.
Jessica Zamora. I don't agree that we should ever remove books, especially not for the purpose of removing identities from our curriculum or the books that are available to kids. Everyone should be able to see themselves in their library, in their classroom, with their peers and their teachers, and everyone should be given power in that classroom by having their identities represented in the curriculum and the books that they're reading. Now, things that we do as a district, now I'm not an expert at curriculum, but we do have district employees who are. They are experts at finding and developing culturally responsive, inclusive, diverse, equitable books, finding the resources that are needed in the classroom, because our curriculum is not perfect. Even the literacy adoption that we just did adopt, we already know that there are pieces of it that will need additions or things to be taken out and other things to be put in, right? Because there's no curriculum out there that's perfect. It's just not been a priority. But it is becoming a priority. When we did our literacy adoption this last time, we did look for, does it match Common Core standards? But we also looked for, is it culturally responsive? Does it include more identities? Now what we found, there was no curriculum that was perfect. And that's just because there has not been any school districts large enough to make that happen and be able to pay for it. But as one large school district in Colorado, we can have a voice and we can continue to tell the publishers that that's what we're looking for. That as we find holes in our curriculum, that we can give that feedback and say, hey, because so much of it's online right now, can you fix this? Can you edit this for the betterment of our students and their education? What else did I want to say with 15 seconds? Lots, but that'll have to do.
Kurt Castine, District B. I think the question was about curriculum and how it's developed. Is that right? Can you restate the question?
How would you ensure that books, curriculum, and standards in PSD are fully inclusive and accurate?
Yeah, so again, Kurt Castine, District B. I think it's important to have a curriculum process, a process for developing curriculum that is repeatable and used consistently within the district. I think we have that in PSD. I paid attention to how the literacy curriculum was developed. I was at the board meeting where the literacy curriculum was presented. Nate was there, Jessica was there. Talked about the committee that had developed the curriculum, the steps that they went through to evaluate it. In the end, there was several criteria that were evaluated, and folks on the committee could sort of vote whether they thought that those criteria were met and to what extent. There was an opportunity for folks to object strenuously, to say, hey, I just don't support this curriculum. Along the way, the experts were involved, that the literacy experts in the district were involved, of course, to bring the latest state-of-the-art knowledge about literacy to the table. Parents were involved. They could help steer the curriculum that was chosen. So it was a real community effort. I think it was a pretty good process. At the end of the day, we, as a school board, have to say whether or not the requirements have been met, whether the standards meet what has been targeted, whether there are enough, is there enough diversity included in the curriculum that we're evaluating. So I think it's a good process. I think we should continue to use it. And I'm pretty satisfied with the process as it exists. It just depends on the school board evaluating the criteria at the end to see if it was met.
I'm sorry to do this. Can you say it one more time?
Yes, we were talking about people are trying to remove representation of BIPOC and LGBTQ people and their cultures as well as histories and lived realities. So how will you ensure that books, curriculum, and standards in PSD are fully inclusive and accurate?
Great question. Kevin Novelda, running for District B. I think I'll stand with the priorities that we have in this district, and I want to address something that it may be an elephant in the room, may not be, but I personally, and as a board director, disagree with the notion that we should be sending our kids to school to learn things with which only we agree in our own worldview. We are entering our kids, in the third district priority is graduate with options. Not every kid may want or elect to go to college and take on an intense financial burden, but there are two district priorities that are really important that I think are worth further discussion and further study. The first is literacy. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a literate democracy or a literate graduate, to go through your PE class and understand that you can read things? That is a fundamental requirement, and as a former English teacher, I would say how we accomplish that is by first deferring to experts. I am not a math teacher. I don't think my thinking as a parent should supplant those of experts that are saying that based on increased understanding in psychology and how our brains learn and get information, I don't think my 30-year-old education that's outmoded should probably have the same voice as those that are studying this and doing this business every day. So to what Jessica was saying and what Connor was saying and what Kurt was saying, the process is good. It's an informed one. It's an important one. There are many voices. As a director, highlight the process that's currently happening and make the value statements that we want to be more inclusive with the curriculum and with the choices of books that we have available to our students.
I think I already answered that.
Did you start?
I started.
Did you start? No, we did. Great.
I'll answer it again.
We're making better time than I thought. Okay, excellent. Thanks for the reminder. So this is about places of belonging. There's more context here, so I'll say a little bit more before we get into the questions. One of our sponsors and hosts, the BIPOC Alliance, recently opened its first ever community space. Within the first month of opening, they have already experienced harm with people outside of the BIPOC community entering the space and questioning their right to exist as a space and organization that serves BIPOC folks. This type of harm and questioning is what makes it nearly impossible for BIPOC and LGBTQ+ and other marginalized communities to find places of belonging, even those intentionally curated. If this is happening in the broader community by adults to adults, it's likely happening among our youth in our schools. These are the questions. What is the importance of places of belonging in schools and the community for BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and other historically marginalized students? How will you ensure that those spaces actually serve the populations they are intended to and are supported by the Poudre School District? Since you started, do you want to pass it to somebody else?
I can go again. It's okay.
Okay.
You sure? Okay. I'm good. Yeah, so this is a really important question. So I think every school should be a place of where people feel safe, no matter what their identity. We're trying to educate every student every day. That is the stated mission of PSD, and we need to do that. With PSD, though, we have a really unique strength, and that is our different types of schools. We have a school choice here that's very much utilized because different schools serve different interests and populations and things like that. And I think it's really important to remember, as we saw last week, think about Polaris. Polaris has a very large LGBTQ community, and they've worked very hard to build that. And we heard at the school board meeting, we heard testimony from several students who talked passionately about how much Polaris meant to them and how it literally saved their lives to be able to go there and finally find a place where they belong. Same thing with Centennial. Well, those are two of the schools that we're talking about consolidating and blending with other schools that may not have a similar culture or student population. I think that's super concerning. I think everybody here should be concerned with how those decisions were made and presented to the community. It was a hugely controversial thing where there was no community outreach. In fact, the superintendent kind of just made the decision and started announcing it to the staff and students on his own with some feedback from the school board, but nothing in public. And so I think as a school board, we really need to make sure that when we're talking about these major issues and potentially breaking up these cultures that have been built over decades, we need to really respect those cultures and talk to them first.
You want to go? Okay. Kevin Novelda, District B. I don't think I've got a silver bullet for this particular issue, but I think it certainly helps with being honest with ourselves and honest with our kids about our own history and where we come from. I think it should start with an inclusive learning model, which I believe we have, is that we're not going to water down or whitewash our own history when we're teaching it to kids, because I think kids are pretty quick to understand systems of power. I think kids are pretty quick to understand dynamics and the value statements that the district above is putting on them as individuals. So to answer your question about safe spaces, I think safe spaces should exist for every kid, especially vulnerable kids in every single school, and they should know where those are. And second, I think as board members, again, I believe in positive reinforcement, positive praise from my time teaching. I think we need to highlight those members of our community that are doing the important work of giving kids and giving our marginalized communities a voice and amplifying that at board meetings and using our airtime and using our local programming to highlight and amplify those voices and say they belong here, they are part of our community, and we are all one.
Kurt Castine, District B. Yeah, so every child, every individual for that matter, deserves a right to be a part of the group that they want to identify with. And so in public schools, it's no different, of course. People have their own affinities. They gather in groups of like-minded folks, and that should be supported. Of course, if that's supported, if there are spaces created, if there are clubs named, if there are classrooms made available, if there are meeting rooms made available, that has to be done for all groups that would want to participate that way. It would include BIPOC, it would include LGBTQIA+, it would include religious groups, it would include Fellowship of Christian Athletes, whatever types of groups might want to be together and form whatever kind of identity they want to, ought to be allowed to do that. If it's good for one, it's good for everyone. I suppose the question might arise, when is it requires staff support? And then it becomes more of a resource issue. And that might be something that is not quite as simple to say that we need 100 different groups in a school with 100 different staff people supporting them. That's quite impossible probably. But I don't see any reason why to curtail that unless we said, boy, it's just better if there's no groups that are allowed to have sort of this affinity. We're not going to give them a space to meet. We're going to say that it's just completely academic. Then there can't be any groups that meet together. Then they can't have any sort of a space or any sort of affinity at school. And I don't think that's what we're about. I think we want to try to enable as many as we can in our public school system.
Can you read the question again, please?
Yes. What is the importance of places of belonging in schools and the community for BIPOC, LGBTQ, and other historically marginalized students? How will you ensure that those spaces actually serve the populations they are intended to and are supported by the Poudre School District?
So, I think this question comes up a lot, and not just for kids, but folks overall, because we need safe spaces for everyone. And our BIPOC and LGBTQI plus kids in particular, tend to be more marginalized, more bullied, more othered than many of our other students. And to, Scott's point about Polaris, sorry, I know I'm not supposed to talk to people, but, we brought up Polaris. I think part of the reason that Polaris feels like such an opportunity is because Polaris is incredibly inclusive. Now, I recognize that pushing that out into other schools may not work as well as just recreating it. I can see that. But also the hope that every school could have that level of inclusivity is something I aspire to, right? And as far as like clubs and those safe spaces go, that's part of our belonging. That's one of our core beliefs as a school district, is that every student will find a space to involve or be involved, to be, man, words are hard today, to find their space where they belong, right? Is not actually the sponsor. And I think that ultimately comes down to you have administrators or you have teachers who can inform those students, who those students feel safe with. So if the student feels like somebody's in the club who's not there for the right reasons, they have the opportunity to have that conversation with a trusted adult, and then that adult should be the one to address the issue.
Thank you. Connor Duffy, again, running for District F. I think the tone is set at the top. So the district directors need to be able to articulate to everybody in the community that our schools are a safe place for everyone, regardless of your identity, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, anything. It's for everyone. That's what public school is. And when we set that tone at the top, then it can matriculate down for our administrators, our students, and everybody to understand that we are very inclusive. We're doing a good job of this already. As we continue on this, when we talk about things such as clubs and extracurricular activities and sponsorships amongst our teachers and amongst our paraprofessionals, it's really important to know from the district level that you are supported, right? You are not only allowed to have that, but you're encouraged to have that. Because when all of our students have a spot where they can identify with their fellow students and learn about each other and learn about who they are as people instead of just another one of their classmates, we're a better district for that, and we're a better community for that. So I think the tone is set at the top, at the director level, and I think we're doing a good job. We can continue to do that.
Great, thank you. What was that?
Do you want me to start this time?
How's your stamina? You feeling okay
good.
about this?
I'm good.
All right. So everybody else in the room, we have 2 more questions. Check your stamina as well. And you all are doing great on time, so I just appreciate you being respectful of the 2 minutes. And also thank you for role modeling your name and your district. As a reminder, you can vote for anybody. They're not just the people who are in your district. And for folks who might be watching this online, it's helpful if they go to a question to see who you are before you answer it. So that's kind of the reason why I asked for it. There was a thought there. Okay, this question topic is accountability. How will you hold yourself and other school board members accountable to the people you serve? Give us examples of how you will ensure you are keeping the community informed so that you can receive and act on direct, informed community feedback.
So once again, Connor Duffy, running for District F. Thank you for this question because it's really, really important. We have some very acute challenges for our district coming up, and these pertain to enrollment. Enrollment, and it was kind of touched on earlier in another question about consolidation. Regrettably, the way that the numbers are trending, consolidation is imminent. We will have to consolidate schools. There is just no financial way that we can keep them all open. That's in the 5, maybe hopefully 7-year time frame. We have probably 3 years of really being able to get out in the community as a director, not only in your district, but as a district as a whole, and not only get feedback from the community, but present the community options for what we're going to do. I'll say right now, there are no good options. Okay? Nobody is going to be really, really happy with this. We've got to do our best to make sure that we do this process and we tackle this challenge in an equitable manner. One of the ways to do that and instill in our community that we are doing that is by getting out in front of our constituents. That is a major role as a director. You're an elected official. You got to get up there and take it from the fire hose, whether you like it or not. If I am elected as a director, that is exactly what we will be doing in the next 3 years.
Do you want me to go
Yeah,
down?
you're gonna go first next time. I'm just gonna let you know you'll start the next round.
Well, all right.
I decided it.
know.
I don't want any more surprises.
Okay, last question. That's me. All right. So I think accountable to the people, as one of the, or actually the only board member, currently serving board member up here, I can tell you, very recently, I had to admit I made a mistake. I've had to apologize. Right? Humility is an important quality in any leadership position. And by admitting a mistake, I can also then garner information from you. I have read 300 emails, at least, probably more at this point. I have met with each and every person who was requested to meet in the last week and for the 2 years before that on other topics, but just not as back-to-back. And I've heard and I've listened, and I will continue to do that. If you need a meeting, if you need something to be said, and you need me to hear you, I will make time for you. I'm trying to remember if there was another piece to this that I needed.
How will you hold yourself and other school board members accountable?
Okay. So holding myself accountable is really listening to you. And you're going to know what I've said to you, and if I'm not doing it, you're going to call me out on it. So part of my own accountability is you holding me to my word. And me holding myself to my word to the best of my ability, but you're also going to know if I miss it. As far as other board members, we are individually elected. So while I can't enforce anyone else's behavior or decision making, I can also share the context that you tell me. So as I have meetings, I can share that information with other board members because it's pertinent to all of us, right? And ultimately, I think, we do a really good job as a board of trying to work together. We definitely don't agree on all things, but we are always civil, we are always kind, and we are very respectful and good listeners. Okay, I see my time is up. Oh, I forgot my name, I'm sorry. Jessica Zamora. You're gonna
District?
get it. Oh, G, thank you. Thanks, Kurt.
You're welcome. Kirk Castine, District B. I was a city council member years ago. I served 2 4-year terms on city council. I learned a lot. It was an eye-opening experience, and it was valuable, very valuable. Much of that, I'm sure, parlays into today. Some of the things that I developed during that time, in terms of accountability, so email is very important. Lots of emails. I had a full-time job. You can't respond to emails immediately, but I generally would get to them in a day. I had just a personal accountability measure. I get to my emails within a day. Phone calls, likewise. If I got a call during the day, try to return it at night. If I got it at night, by the next morning, let's return the call. So, within 12 hours or so, get around to responding to phone calls. With a full-time job, volunteer positions, you have to set rules like that, not maybe as, on the spot as folks would like, but within a reasonable time frame. But only being responsive, reactive is not enough. I had quarterly meetings when I was a council member. So what I would do is I would reserve the Harmony Library, a public space. I would invite the public to come, and I would invite certain staff members to be there. I would say, hey, we're going to come, we're going to talk about issues that are affecting you. It was generally stuff that was happening in the next 6 months in our agenda. I would set the agenda to say to folks, here's what we're going to talk about, and I would also have a Q&A session at the end. So it was a regular quarterly meeting. People could come, they would hear what I had to say. I had plenty of time for them to say what they wanted to say. And then we had staff people there to answer questions as well from the experts, or to take ARs, actions, to follow up with later. I'll do that again. And then in terms of keeping each other accountable, you lead by example. But then also there are times when we will have to pull together as a board and say, hey, people aren't getting heard on this topic. You know what? We should have a public meeting and get some Q&A.
Kevin Avelda, District B. I'll start by answering the question by saying, I vow and I promise to everyone, if you vote for me, that I will continue to use the words, I don't know. I think we tend to forget that our elected officials are not perfect people. They sometimes make mistakes. They hold themselves accountable. They say they're sorry. I'm not going to be a perfect board director. I can promise you that. But I will promise to listen to my fellow board members, to try to engage in all the McNuggets of everything that we're trying to decide, not just the surface level, because that's who I am, that's how I'm wired. This is really, really important to me. Education runs deep in me, and I'm passionate about it. I can talk to anyone till I'm blue in the face about it. So this is a job I very, very badly want, an unpaid volunteer position I don't think I've ever worked so hard in my life for. That said, how to hold each other accountable. As an attorney, I believe that we can't have a frank conversation about a case or anything until we at least identify what the evidence is that's not in dispute. And so I think my commitment too is, as far as accountability to and from the community, if there's going to be a big decision made, if there's going to be a big vote made that relies upon a crucial piece of information or data, you deserve to have that. That's what I believe. And I do think sometimes we also forget that this is not just a democracy, this is a representative democracy. We elect people to make decisions for us. So on that note, since the consolidation news has kind of been brought up, one thing I'm doing right now is still talking to the parents of the affected and impacted schools. I'm trying to meet these parents and the teachers at their schools in some of the spare time in my workday. I want to hear from them, and I want to have a steering committee made up before one is made up for the people, because I think they are the best arbiters of who the best leaders are and experts in their school, and it's my job, again, to tell them, I don't know, and I will listen.
I'm going to try to collect my thoughts. Kind of hungry. You said McNuggets, so.
That's what you got out of it.
That's what I got out of that whole thing. Thank you very much. Just got stuck there. Anyhow, no, all kidding aside, this is a really important issue. I think one of the things that has come across from the school board, and this is, I don't totally blame them, because during the COVID years, things got a little crazy in those school board meetings. So they changed public comment and the policies. I would change them back to what they were before and kind of model things after what the city council is doing. Right now, someone will get up there, give their comment, and all they get is thank you for your comment and move along. There's a feeling of not being heard. There's an aloofness that I think people see from the board, and that I know is not intentional. I know a lot of the board members, and they're not like that, but it comes across that way, and I think that's a bad public perception that the school board needs to get past. So I would change those policies right away. I think I agree with a lot that's been said here about leading by example with the other school board members. I think we owe it to our community. There's been a lot of damage done in recent years in terms of, which tribe are you in, which side are you on? We need to work together to solve very real issues in this district. We can't be an us against them kind of community anymore. We really have to work together, compromise, have debate, have discussions, and really be curious about things. What is causing the enrollment problems? It's not just birth rates. We really need to think about what's going on here and come to a solution. So I think we have to lead by example with ourselves, with the community, and our students are looking at us as well. How are they going to interact as adults? They need to see the adults in the room doing the right thing and interacting correctly.
Great, thank you. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to make an executive decision, but for the last question, you get 1 minute. That's to preserve extra time for your closing comments. So let's pass it to Jessica. The final question is on professional development. Ash, you okay with that? All right. The question is, how will you ensure that staff, faculty, and administrators are trained using community-informed best practices for professional development for supporting and teaching underrepresented and systemically marginalized students? I know.
Really? Okay, 1 minute. All right, so I think this goes back to experts, right? This is not my area of expertise. So to ensure it, I need to depend on our staff who are already experts at creating professional development. They are also experts at knowing what biases exist, how to help people identify their own bias, and how to help people overcome that bias, right? So the professional development, now I'm just like, okay. So, yeah, man, no, I'm sorry.
It's ensure that everyone is trained using community-informed best practices for supporting the historically marginalized and systemically underrepresented
Thank
students.
you. Apologies. So I think it just really comes down to listening to our experts, making sure that we're also utilizing some of our community partners, right? Our school district does have fantastic experts, but we also have CSU nearby. We have community partners who are experts in their respective areas of what students need. And so having those folks tell us, where we're getting it wrong, what the steps are to help us do it right, and making sure that that gets pushed out to all staff everywhere. Thank you.
Let's go this way for change. Yeah, that's you.
Me?
That's you.
Yeah,
Yep.
good.
1 minute.
Kurt Castine, District B. One thing you should know about me is I'm an engineer. I'm an engineering director today at Intel Corporation. I've been an engineer for a long time, 33 years. And engineers ask questions. I will definitely be asking questions. And one thing that I need to know, that I want to understand, is the training that is already available for district staff. I don't have that data today. I don't know what all the training is that, that staff are required to have, where it comes from, if they feel it's sufficient or not. So one of my goals will be to understand that, and then to understand the need. And the need probably is best described from the folks in the trenches. Again, I will want to get input from teachers on what they require to do their jobs the best. So my main goal will be to understand what they have today, what their deficits are, and then to try to accomplish filling those deficits.
Kevin Havelda, District B. I echo what Jessica said about experts. I believe that. This is something I feel very strongly about too, is that we have to meet teachers where they are. And to think that it's just a one-time course that you teach to teachers in the summer that they're just going to pick up, I think is not good. They're human beings, and they have their own biases, and they have their own issues that they need to overcome if they're going to roll something out in an equitable manner in their classrooms. And so I think that if it's a one and done, that's a Band-Aid on a solution. I think it has to be part of our constant conversations, quarterly PDs. And this doesn't mean extra, but it means in the place of maybe some other PDs, so we're not exacerbating teachers. But I think if we're gonna have a commitment to diversity and inclusion, that we actually need to meet people where they are, explore how this plays out in their classrooms, and then assess to see where we are and what more we need.
Yeah, I think this is obviously all these questions are very important. Professional development, you definitely have to talk to the people that are the stakeholders, the teachers that are actually learning, making sure they are bought into it being a worthwhile thing. Also, when we talk about experts, we got to make sure the administration does the work to know that they're experts, that they're bringing to the table. They're not wasting people's time. The literacy implementation, I've talked to several teachers that are teaching the new literacy program, and they're very concerned. One teacher said that during her training, the person who was putting on the training says, I've never taught this class before. I don't fully understand it, and kept having to basically just read their PowerPoints, not fully engaged. We need to make sure the expert is prepared, and then that will help us get buy-in for these new programs that we're implementing.
All right.
Sorry.
So I would start off by saying flexibility in the professional development area. Our teachers have so much on their plate already in this area that they are constantly training. What we have to be flexible about is integrating some of the new perspectives into their existing training. It's got to be integrated into all of their training so that they have a better understanding in their profession of what they are going to deal with in the classroom. That's really, really important. I also want to make a clear distinction. This isn't something that I see as another training and another training and another training, because what ends up happening is we constantly seem to be ping-ponging back and forth about all these different trainings, and quite honestly, it burns the teachers out. So flexibility and integration of those curriculums within their existing training, I think, is the best way to go to have the most qualified professional development programs for our teachers.
Great, thank you all. So we're going to end with closing statements for each of you. I would like to offer 2 minutes for everyone. That'll put us a little bit over the time. So you have up to 2 minutes. No need to ramble if you don't have anything else you want to say. But Kevin, I don't think you've started more than once, so can we start with you?
Kevin Velda, District B. I'd like to begin my closing remarks by stating my why and why this is so important to me. My first year teaching at an alternative school in New Orleans, 2 of my students were shot and killed within 2 weeks of each other. One was 18 and couldn't read his first name. The other was a 13-year-old that was murdered because he wouldn't join his rival gang, and so as an entrance exam, the kids killed him. 2 kids within 2 weeks, and it has haunted me ever since. And I got asked this question recently that, those problems are in New Orleans, they're not here in PSD. A recent census has suggested that 7% of our children live below the poverty line here in Larimer County. To put that to an actual number, that's roughly 26,000 kids that may go to school without knowing where the next meal is going to come from. That don't know what home environment they're going to go home to. As a school board director, we do have to focus on academics. We have to focus on making our schools as strong as possible, but we can't ever forget that there are kids that go to our schools that depend on our schools for more than just books and mortar. They depend on it for community. They depend on it for their development of who they are. And so as a board director, I tend to glean on my experiences teaching in New York, teaching in New Orleans, and also highlighting the excellent work that PSD is already doing and some of the work that it's doing, particularly for mental health and belonging of our students. My 5-year-old goes to these schools, and there's a reason that we chose PSD for that, because it's focused not just on academic excellence, but also on the holistic approach to educating an entire child so that they enter this world and become good community members and good neighbors and good people. We all live in Fort Collins, and it's a wonderful place to live, and our schools should be a direct reflection of that. If you don't want to vote for me, that's totally fine. You have great people up here that are also committed to doing great work. But if you are interested in voting for me, I'd ask that you tell 3 people about this school board race, because people don't know about it and they need to know how important it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's close.
I would love to also share why I'm running. I'm a father of 3 kids. 2 of them are already out of the district, had a wonderful experience. I have one still at Rocky, who's also having a great experience. And my motivation to run, though, is that real-world preparation. I run a small business. I hire kids coming out of high school and have found they're woefully unprepared for the real world. And I think that's something that we're responsible as the adults in Fort Collins to make happen. So I think it's important that we talk about, there's different groups that are very interested in this race in the schools, and we keep talking about these different separate groups, but really it's all the students. There's 30,000 students that we need to get up to the point where they can be the best version of themselves possible and go out and thrive. Public education, there is a long tradition in the United States of public education changing lives. There's so many stories. Just think about Abraham Lincoln, what he came from. He was a self-taught person, but it was because of the influence of his first teacher, which was his mom, to learn to read, and he read everything he could get his hands on and became the President of the United States, probably our greatest president. That can happen to anybody because of the opportunities in this country. We need to make sure we're allowing that to happen. I think there's a deficit in learning financial literacy. That's a big deal. There are kids that are taking on $200,000-$300,000 in student loans just because they want to go to a school that has a great football team. My daughter was almost one of those, and we avoided the Clemson mistake. But there are other issues. Like if you're graduating, if you're not going to college, you still need to understand how an apartment lease works, how taxes work. We owe it to the kids. That should be a requirement. Every kid coming out to understand that stuff. I have more, but I will say.
Let's pass it to Kurt.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
Kurt Castine, District B. I really appreciate being here tonight, being a part of this conversation. I really do. You know, I've been knocking on doors for a long time, since the beginning of August. And it's hard work. It's really interesting. I've had some amazing conversations. Every time I go out, I learn something new about myself, about the district, about the people I'm talking to. It's really been an outstanding experience, although it is very difficult. I give folks credit up here for running. It's a hard thing to do. But when I come to some doors, I say, hey, you know, I'm Kurt Castine, I'm out here, I'm running for school board, and they'll look at me and they'll go, what? Why do you want to do that? Because people realize how difficult the job is today of public schools, period. It's a tough environment. There's a lot of different opinions about things, a lot of struggles to understand how to do things right. And so when I get that question, I appreciate it because it gives me a chance to take a deep breath and take a step back and say, yeah, you're right, it is a hard job. But it's important. Our kids are important. There are 30,000 kids in the district that need a good education. And it's for them and it's for me. I have selfish reasons. I want kids to do great so that our city thrives, so that our state thrives, so that our country thrives. Investing in our kids is no better place to invest. I think it's just exactly the right point to try to impact our country. I have lived in this town for 29 years. I'm invested. My wife and I raised 3 wonderful kids who attended PSD. I'm on in my career now. I work at Intel. I'm nearing the end. I'm not done yet, but I'm starting to think about what's the next thing. I can't think of a better place. I'm available. I'm making myself available, and I'd like to serve. Thanks.
So Jessica Zamora, just make sure we continue that thread because I think I missed it a few times. And thank you just for having us. Thanks for hosting and listening. So I'll just kind of go really far back. I got a really good education growing up, a spectacular education. I was very well prepared for my future. And then I went to college and I got an engineering degree. But while I was in engineering school, I found a lot of peers that would have been phenomenal engineers, but their math skills just weren't strong enough to be able to finish that program. And so they switched and did something else. And so I became a teacher instead. Because I knew I could be a good engineer, but I also knew that my passion for making sure that other people had that opportunity was greater. And so I taught high school math. I have 2 young boys. We moved to Colorado. I tutored K-12 math. I have taught GED courses. I currently am an adjunct professor at 3 different community colleges because I continue that effort of ensuring that other people have the opportunity that I was given. Now, the reason I got on the board in the first place was to actually continue that work, but to also give the same opportunity that my children have. My children, I went to the kindergarten, like back to school night or the parent invitational before he was even a kindergartner, right? Trying to decide what school to send him to. And I went to one school. I went to our neighborhood school. I had planned to go to others, but I didn't need to after parents' night. Because the first thing that principal said was that they're gonna make good people. Because what I missed, and when I first became a teacher, was that, yeah, I wanted to make people great engineers, and I wanted people to have the opportunity to do all the things that they wanted to learn, but I also need them to be good people. And the thing is, the schools that my kids go to are exceptional. They have phenomenal test scores, but they focus on people first. And as a school board director, I've been here for 2 years. That continues to be my focus. That continues to be my priority, and it will for the next 4 years. Okay, I've got a lot to say.
Thank you. Connor Duffy, District F. Thanks everybody for coming this evening, and I really appreciate you showing up because a lot of times it's just candidates kind of sitting around talking to ourselves. I'm running for school board for a myriad of reasons, but most importantly is because I think that our school district right now is doing a very good job. Do we have some challenges that we have to face in the future? Yes. But the district as a whole is doing a good job, and I want to help to improve that and continue on that path. Some of those challenges that are coming down the pike are going to be very difficult, like I said. I had somebody call me the Debbie Downer candidate the other day because I keep talking about the challenges that we have. But they are serious, and one of the reasons why I'm running is because I want to be a part of those decisions. And the reason why I want to be a part of those decisions is because if we get them right, we can come out of it a better district, a better community, and we'll have better outcomes for our students. That's really, really important for me. My wife and I had the opportunity to pick where we wanted to live. And the deciding factor to be in Northern Colorado and in this area was PSD. I want to have other families that are thinking about moving up here to have that same opportunity and say, oh, wow, that school district, they're doing it right. Because our district is doing it right. It's showing good outcomes. I'm super happy. I had parent-teacher conference today. Super happy with the outcomes for my personal kids, and I want to see that for everybody's. Thank you very much for coming tonight, and again, my name's Connor Duffy, and I'm running for District F.
Thank you all for your answers to the questions, for taking the time to help us all understand your positions on them. And I want to thank you all for coming and attending, particularly Out Boulder, the Cultural Enrichment Center, and the BIPOC Alliance for organizing this for our community.